of the subcommittee who was a member of the full committee.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair Latta and Ranking Member Matsui for holding this hearing, and the Chair and Commissioners for your service in being here today. Before I go on with my questioning, Chair Rosenworcel, I think you wanted to make a statement in response to the AI issue yet?
I just think transparency is a good thing. Disclosing when AI use is a good thing, and the FCC has authority in this area and has had authority since the 1930s.
Thank you. Throughout my tenure in Congress, I have championed efforts to extend broadband access to unserved and underserved areas. Last Congress, I was proud to support the bipartisan infrastructure law, which allocated over $42 billion for high-speed broadband deployment nationwide. With these historic investments, accurate broadband maps are essential for the equitable and effective allocation of federal funds. Chairman Warcel, I appreciated your work on behalf of my district, visiting the district and listening carefully to what my constituents had to say about this issue, and I appreciate your written testimony on the National Broadband Map and commend the FCC for the substantial progress made in updating these maps over the past few years. However, in the capital region of New York, we are still seeing the effects of unreliable data. Communities often struggle with slow speeds, unreliable connections, or no service, despite being designated as having access. This disparity can hamper economic development and perpetuate systemic inequalities, widening the digital divide. So can you speak, please, Commissioner Chair, can you speak to how the FCC is incorporating consumer-reported data on broadband availability and quality into its mapping efforts, and the role public feedback plays in efforts to refine our broadband maps?
Yeah, public feedback is so important. We built maps based on the Broadband Data Act, which was bipartisan work of this committee. Those maps are light years ahead of anything we've ever had before, and they're iterative. They're improving all the time. The primary way that they improve is when consumers and state and local officials go onto that website and register a complaint or a criticism that says, you say there's service here, I'm standing right in that location and no, there's not. And so I would encourage you to encourage your constituents to work with that map, and I'd be happy to set up times for them to discuss it with our broadband mapping team, because I know feedback from local individuals is the way we get this data right.
Thank you so much. And can you discuss how the FCC collaborates with other federal agencies, state governments, and industry stakeholders to streamline broadband mapping efforts and ensure a cohesive approach to improving nationwide broadband access?
Yeah, it's a really, really big task, to be candid with you. When I got to the agency and I took over, one of the first things I did was said, okay, we're going to do better maps, and then I studied it, and I instantly understood why nobody had done it before. We had to build a data set of tax records, property records, satellite images that indicated where every single household is in the United States. And then we had to build a system that was capable of taking in data from all of our carriers and then feedback and crowdsourced information from local, state, tribal, and consumers, all telling us what's going on. The system right now is terrific. We've got 115 million households that we indicate where broadband is. We know that in 6 million of them that it is not present, but it can always be improved. That's why we update it every 6 months. And coming out this week, in fact, is another rulemaking from the FCC that all my colleagues supported, which asks questions about how we improve this process further to make sure we take into account smarter approaches to things like fixed wireless and technologies that may not have been at the forefront when the Broadband Data Act was passed by this committee.
Thank you. Additionally, earlier this year, I was pleased to see your proposal to improve routing for the 988 Suicide and Crisis Lifeline. As a co-lead of the bipartisan 988 Lifeline Improvement Act, I am committed to ensuring that callers in crisis receive access to locally relevant mental health resources. In May, the KFF released analysis of the utilization of 988's Suicide and Crisis Lifeline's LGBTQ service, showing that 10% of all 988 outreach was made via the LGBTQ service, but only 20% of LGBTQ adults were even aware of the 988 service. So could you discuss any initiatives the FCC is undertaking to raise public awareness about the availability and purpose of 988, especially among vulnerable populations that may benefit most from the service?
Yeah, well, first things first, we are seeing substantial increases in the use of 988, this simple 3-digit number. More people understand it, more people know about it. We're getting many more calls than we previously did under the 10-digit number that was hard for folks to remember. We're going to have to work on publicizing it with mental health authorities. My colleagues and I have a lot of skills, but we are not mental health experts. So we've been coordinating with the Health and Human Services Department and the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Agency there. And going forward, we're going to work with them to make sure that calls are geo-routed. In other words, we get information off the cell tower so that when we send that 988 caller to a help center, they'll be sent to assistance that's nearby.
Thank you so much. And Mr. Chair, I yield back.
Gentleman yields back.